I'm going to be working with the following materials to make this trouser design. First of all, I'm going to be needing a long ruler to be able to draw out my belt straps. I've also done a pattern tutorial for this trouser, which I'm going to be linking down below in the description box. I'm going to be needing my fabric scissors and my mini scissors as well. I also got myself about 1 meter of elastic band that is about 2 inches wide or 5 centimeters. I also have my tape measure, a chalk just to do some markings, matching navy blue thread, and then denim fabric. This fabric has 0 stretch, so I was happy that the pattern I worked with had a lot of ease, so that just made my life so much easier. And I worked with about 2 meters. I also have some pins which I'm going to be using to pin down my patterns on my fabric. So I've gone ahead and I've pinned down my patterns on my fabric like so. And I'm just going to go in ahead and cut out all of my pieces using my fabric scissors. So I'm just going in now to cut out my main sort of trouser part, which is the 2 fronts and the 2 backs. And when you cut around like this, it's just easier to just lay the fabric flat and then just go ahead and cut out your different panels using your fabric scissors. So I'm just going ahead now to just cut out my elastic channels like so, and you will need to also cut out your notches. So I'm just doing that using my mini scissors, and what notches are is they're just tiny incisions that would help you remember what panel belongs to where and when it's time to sort of match edges together. So when you've removed the pattern, you actually know where that pattern is supposed to be. So I'm just going in here to cut the notch for my pockets on my front panels like so I know where my pocket actually is supposed to sit. So these are all of my pieces cut out, laid out flat. I have my back pieces, I need 2 of them. I have my elastic channels, which I'll be needing 2 pairs for the back and 2 pairs for the front. I also have my sort of frill, which I'm going to be folding and then inserting into the elastic channel. I have my belt hoops, which are 8 centimeters long and 4 centimeters wide, and these we're going to be folding in such a way that we have nice clean hoops to fit around the waist, and I cut a total of 6. So once those are cut out, I also have my front pieces here. I have 2 of them. I also have my elastic channels, my frill for the paper bag detail around the top of the waist. I also have my pocket bags, which I cut out 2 pairs for each side of my front. So a pair for the left and a pair for the right, because the way the pocket is going to work is you will need to sew the outer edges, bag it out, and then top stitch it onto the front of your trouser. I also have my belt strap that is about 152 centimeters long and 13 centimeters wide, and this is just a length that I thought would be great if I want to like tie a nice bow detail in the front. The first thing we're going to be sewing is the pockets, and I'm going to be placing right sides together like so, add a few pins around, and we're going to be sewing the main cornered edges like this, leaving that side open and also sewing that slanted angle. So you can turn this inside out, press it before attaching it to the front of your left or your right front trouser. So I'm just sewing down the sides like so. When I get to the corner, make a nice turn and sew all the way to this edge like so. Then I'm going to also sew this slanted edge up, because this is the side which your hand will sort of slide in through. Just make sure to trim the corners like this, so when you turn it inside out, that corner is nice and sharp on the right side of your fabric. So I'm just going in to turn my pockets inside out, give them a nice press so they are nice and flat, and then I'm going to go ahead and pin them on my front trouser panels. So this is what my 2 front pockets look like, really nice and neat, and it's a cool way to make a front pocket without having to cut into your main front trouser or skirt or wherever you want your patch pockets to be. So I'm just going ahead and I'm pinning my pockets along the top and the side of my fronts, and because I notched the points where I want my pockets to sit. I don't have to think too much about measuring them and ensuring that they are symmetrical and of the same sort of distance. And the way this is going to work is you're going to top stitch the pocket onto the front trouser. Now I'm sewing on a 0.3 edge stitch, attaching my pockets onto the front of my trouser on the right side, and your top stitch has to be as nice and as neat as possible because it's going to be visible from the outside on the front of your trouser. Something that helps is to place a few pins so the pocket bag doesn't move when you're sewing, and just take your time because literally you are in competition with no one but yourself. So I'm going to repeat the same for the left and for the right hand side, and this is what the pockets should look like. So once you've top stitched it automatically, that means the pocket is going to be secured on those edges. So now I'm just going to take my back panels and I'm going to be pinning the outer and inner leg. So once I sew that outer leg of the front to the back, we immediately sandwich the side of the pocket into that seam. So now I'm going to sew on a 1 centimeter seam allowance from the top all the way to the bottom or vice versa, and I'm going to be sewing that side seam and inner leg seam of my left and of my right trouser leg. So now I'm just using a normal straight stitch and I'm sewing on my domestic machine, sewing all the way from the top to the bottom and just taking my time with the process until I reach the edge of the seam, not forgetting to do my back stitch when I get to the edge to secure my seam and to ensure that it doesn't unravel. So I'm just going back in with my overlocker to trim off the seam allowance and any rough threads along that edge, and this just makes the inside of the trouser look just as nice as it looks on the outside. So once we've done this for the left and for the right hand side, it means that we can go ahead and join the crouch seam of the trouser. So I'm starting from the very midpoint here and I'm just pinning the midpoint of the left and the right trouser leg together like so, and I'm going to pin together my fronts, align my notches. So once I take this to my machine, I know I can just sew this crouch seam using one continuous stitch from the beginning all the way to the end. Now sewing on a 1 centimeter seam allowance using a normal straight stitch, I'm joining my left and right trouser leg together along that crouch line like so, and when I get to the end, I just remember to do my back stitch as I did at the beginning of the seam. So I also went ahead and I overlocked that seam as well, so everything is nice and secure on the inside of the trouser. So with that done, the main bottom of the trouser is done and it's time to work on the waistband. So for the waistband, I'm going to be starting with the elastic channels, which is laid out here like so, and I'm going to be pinning my sort of pairs. So there is a pair for each side. There is a pair for the left, a pair for the right, for the front and for the backs as well. So now I'm just pinning together the center fronts and the center backs so I can join the side seams later on. So I'm going to do this for the front and for the back pieces, joining them on a 1 centimeter seam allowance along the center front and the center back. So now I'm just sewing on a 1 centimeter seam allowance using a normal straight stitch like so, and I went ahead and I pressed my seams out nice and flat, and now I'm pairing them in such a way that there is a front paired to a back. So I have like one pair for the inside and one pair for the outside, which would be nice and finished on the in and out of the trouser for the elastic channel. So now I'm sewing the side seams like so for the two sets that we have before going ahead to work on the frill panel that sits into the elastic channel. So now I'm just pinning together my center front. I'm going to go ahead and pin together my center back, essentially the same way we assembled the elastic channel band. We're going to repeat the same for this guy here. So we're going to sew up the center front and sew up the center back on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, because once you sew up the center front and center backs, you can then go ahead and join the side seams and you have one full piece to work with. So I went ahead and I pressed to open my seams. I pressed the fold in as well, so I know exactly where the fold is supposed to be for the front and for the back panels, and I've pinned them together like so, and we're going to be joining the side seams like this. So I'm going to be taking this to my machine and I'm going to be sewing on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, drawing my front to my back, remembering to do my back stitch when I get to the end of my seam. So with that all done, it's time to work on our belt hoops, because these need to sit into the elastic channel as well as the frill panel. So I have a total of 6. There are different ways to do this. Some people actually go ahead and hand stitch this in such a way that you don't see any seams. This is how it's done in like proper tailored trousers and suits, but for mine, I'm just folding it like so, and I'm going to be sewing along the edge. Because it's about 4 centimeters wide, I folded 1 cm in on each side, and I'm going to be sewing it this way across. You will see a seam, but at least you won't see any raw edge on the outside of the belt hoops. With all 6 belt hoops done, it's time to assemble this waistband together. So I'm going to be pinning the first pair of belt hoops 10 centimeters from the center front, and the way I did this is I pinned them along the bottom of the frill, and I just used my chalk to mark where I want my belt hoops to be. The second set is about 5 centimeters from the center back, and that's the pair I'm pinning on right now. And when you sort of evenly space them out, it shows on the outside of the trouser. So I'm just going ahead to pin this particular piece here flat like so, and then the third set is going to be around the side seam, and it is 5 centimeters from the side seam towards the back. So what you're looking at right now is the back of the waistband, and the other side is the front. So I'm just going in to pin this particular belt hoop on this side here, and I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side of this panel, as you can see here. So once you've pinned all of your belt hoops in place, you're going to sandwich that particular seam using the elastic channels, and that's the reason why we needed 2. So once that is done, I'm going to take my first elastic channel like this. I'm going to flip it inside out, and then I'm going to match center back to center back, side seam to side seam, and center front to center front. This particular side here is what you're going to see on the outside of the trouser, which is where the belt hoops would sit. So I'm just going ahead to add a few more pins all the way around, and once you finish with this first layer of pinning here, we are going to grab the second elastic channel and repeat the same thing on the other side of the frill panel. So I'm just going ahead to finish up this last set like so, and I've folded out the frill panel so we can see the other edge. Now taking the other side of the elastic channel, I'm going to flip it inside out and put right sides together, and I'm going to be pinning that edge on the top to the other side of the frill panel, or the paper bag detail, which is going to be ruched back in along the waist of the trouser. So I've pinned that in place, and we're going to be stitching both sides of this particular waistband piece here. So when you're sewing this side that has the belt hoops, remember to catch the belt hoops at the exact points you matched them on. And the way it works is you sew the elastic channel to that side of the frill panel, and you catch the belt hoops sandwiched in the middle. So I'm just sewing here on a 1 centimeter seam allowance using a normal straight stitch, remembering to remove my pins and doing a back stitch at the end. So once you've done that for the outside panel, you do that for the inside panel. This is what your waistband should look like. There are many ways to do this. I just thought doing it this way was a lot less confusing, because when it's time to actually fix your elastic into the channel, all you have to do is close off the top of that channel, close off the bottom, and then you pass your elastic band through. So now I have pinned my channels together, and I've cut out my elastic band, which is the same measurement as my waist, and we are sewing along the stitch like this. So this is the outside of the waistband, and when you sew like so, you are forcing that the belt hoops to stay down nice and flat. You are closing off the channel on the top, which would enable you to create that room for your elastic band to be passed through. So once that is done, I'm just going to finish it off with a backstitch to secure my seam in place, and we're going to be pinning the waistband into the waistline of the trouser. So I'm going to grab this waistband sort of piece that we've created here, and I'm going to be turning it inside out like so. So we have the belt hoops on the inside, and then I'm going to be pinning it into the waistline of the trouser. So now I'm just going to match a center front to center front like this, side seam to side seam, center back to center back. So with one stitch we can sew the waistband into the waistline of your trouser, but just remember to leave a chunk open because we need to pass the elastic band through. So just a chunk that is about 3 inches wide. So I've gone ahead and I've stitched my waistband into the waistline of the trouser, and this is what it looks like. I made a few mistakes, but thank God you can't see it. But the next thing I'm going to be doing is to pass my elastic channel right through using a safety pin. And because the elastic band was quite wide, this took me some time, but I succeeded at the end. So just take your time when you're doing so, or work with a slightly narrower elastic band. So now I'm just going to pass that right through until it comes out at the other edge, and we're going to be joining the two ends of the elastic band together before tucking it back into the elastic channel and then finishing off that seam. So I'm just going to take this to my machine and stitch the elastic bands close like this, and then tuck it back into the channel like so, and then close up that seam which we left open to pass the elastic through. I'm going to be showing the opening we left for the elastic band to go through close using a normal straight stitch on a 1 centimeter seam allowance before going ahead to overlock that entire seam all the way around, so we don't have any loose threads or raw edges on the inside of the trouser. So this is what the waistband looks like right now. It came out really nice and neat. Thank God my overlocker has come back to life, and it just made the finishing of the garment really professional. So once that is done, I'm going to go ahead and sew my belt together. I've already cut it out, and I'm going to be folding it in half, and I'm just going to add a few pins at the beginning, at the middle, and at the end, because what I want to do here is I want to be able to sew the sides, this short side and the whole long side close, but leaving this other end open so I can turn the belt inside out. So I'm just sewing on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, turning at this corner here and sewing it down like so all the way till I get to the end of the belt strap, and remembering to do a back stitch because we have to turn this inside out, and if there's not a back stitch there, it would easily unravel when you're trying to push the right side through. So with that all done, I'm just going to go ahead and give it a nice press. I top stitch the open end close so we don't have any raw edges showing, and I'm done with the belt. So I went ahead and I passed the belt through the belt hoops on the trouser just to make sure that everything worked, and it came out looking really nice and neat. The silhouette of this trouser is fairly baggy, so if that's not your cup of tea, then I don't know, but I really like the finish. I like how comfortably it fits. And for the hem, I turned it up like so. You can go ahead and turn yours inside and stitch it, but because it's denim, you can get away with a lot of turn up details along the hem of the trouser. So that is the finished look. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this tutorial. It has a rather modern oversized fit, and that's something that I'm really into these days. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching all the same. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up, comment all of your thoughts and ideas down below, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.